Hey everyone, welcome to the DeFi Scoop, your scoop for everything DeFi and more. I am here with the Gelato founders, the OGs, the masterminds, the architects of the Gelato gang, Hilmar and Luis. How are you guys doing?
All good over here.
Yeah, very well.
Zook has been treating us well.
Zook has been bringing out your best turtlenecks, I have to say that.
Yeah.
I could never pull off the turtleneck, but you guys just do it just so perfectly, and I wish I had that level of swag. So kudos to you guys.
You have your InkDAO swag.
I have my InkDAO in real life swag. That's truly a one-of-one NFT that that's unique to me. But I'd like to start this off with saying, what's your favorite flavor of gelato?
I can actually start off. So it's a mix between two flavors, and there's a special variant. So what I did when I was young is I actually went to my favorite gelato store, which is by the way called Il Gelato. It's kind of the place. When I was young, I had this phase where I took my bicycle, I drove there, and I got 8 scoops of ice cream. And I did
scoops.
8 scoops, literally 8
That's
scoops.
That's a lot.
I did it for a whole summer. Because when you were younger, you did a lot of sports, right? You could eat as much ice cream as you want.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I hope you didn't get a little too chubby from that.
I was doing a lot of sports, and it was basically lemon, chocolate chili, lemon, chocolate cherry. So it had some spice and some sweet to it.
That sounds really exotic.
And it was basically chocolate and lemon.
I remember when I was younger, I would spend my time down the shore in Long Beach Island, which was a place on the Jersey Shore, and I lived right next to an ice cream shop called Skipper Dipper, and I ate there every day, but I did get fat. I did gain 20, 30 pounds. And I'm just oh God, I should really lose weight. But anyways, Luis, what about you? What's your favorite flavor of gelato?
So I think a really well done pistachio ice cream is something special. And then if you want to go fancy, you should try tonka bean ice cream. They usually only have it at fancy places, but that's also a really nice taste of its own.
What's tonka bean?
So yeah, I mean it's some fancy bean, and yeah, it tastes really well. Apparently it's an aphrodisiac, so yeah, do with it what you want to do with it, but yeah.
Well, if I'm ever at a fancy place with a date, I'll be sure to look for some tonka bean. How did you guys meet? Before the gelato, before the ice cream?
Yeah, man. So we actually spent a good amount, a good chunk of our lives together already before that. We went to school in England. So we met in 2010 in school in England. Obviously, we're both from Germany, but we went to school in England at least for the last years of high school. And then we just were vibing in London. We studied there. I went to King's College. Hilmar went to CAS, London City University. And yeah, so then we went to Berlin, and that's kind of where we started, to work in startups. We were at e-commerce startups. Really got to know the tech scene in Berlin. Then did a master's there. And during our master's, we basically discovered blockchain. There was a guy from MasterCard in our course who was always preaching about it in 2016. That was the era of blockchain, not Bitcoin, I guess. He was from MasterCard and super hyped about it, and I think he kind of dragged us into it. Yeah, but I would say we've been doing blockchain things together for quite a long time. Definitely since 2017. Before Gelato, we had a consultancy and kind of a tech shop in Berlin to build private blockchain implementations for very big clients in Europe. That was during the day, that was during office hours. Privately, we were already way deep into public blockchain stuff, mostly Ethereum. In Berlin, the scene was quite vibrant, right? So we went to all of these meetups. We were into some weird stuff back then, Schliesske aped into that. Some other stuff, yeah.
We also, I think, hosted a couple of meetups ourselves back in the day. I think one of the earlier kind of crypto meetups. I think it was 2016? No,
17. I think,
2017. Did some meetups there where we had interesting interesting founders from the Berlin crypto space speaking. And yeah, we just like went really completely with everything we had into it. Went to like on a day, like in the afternoon, went to meetups or at night, and during the day just researched, did our master thesis about these different topics basically, and yeah. So and
what was your master's thesis about?
I think mine was the impact of initial coin offerings on the venture capital industry. And yours?
I wrote mine on proof of stake and the differences of scaling in the roadmaps of Ethereum and Lisk.
You really like that Lisk.
Yeah. So back then, I mean, to be honest, like I was reading a lot of papers on the Ethereum GitHub, like on Caspar back then. And Lisk was just like the blockchain project in Berlin where, you know, we actually met the founders and so on. And so they're like, I had private talks with them about the roadmap and so on. So that's how I really got into that, I guess.
So what was the Berlin scene like in like 2017, 2018 at like the hype of the last bull run? And then how was it when it just was like slowly, painfully just going down? I remember EOS had like one last run in June and stuff before their launch, but like it was basically a slow bleed down. So like what was that like going from like, oh, like all this hype, excitement, blockchain, Lisk, blah blah blah, and then boom.
Because we we have been following the space and got in invested most of our time in 2017, starting like before the like super high bull run in summer. So we kind of like it already started slowly there, I would say, and then over the period of like June 2017 to December 2017, you already had like this one bust, right, and then it like slowly came up again, and then it went really crazy like December and January, right?
Yeah, it was like a few days I just went like absolutely.
I think you had more and more events, and you always saw like the same people at these events, and then I spoke to some of them and they're like, I'm literally just here for the free beer and the pizza. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And then like for us, I think that the peak of the bull market was this Lisk event. There was like one Lisk Foundation event. It's not like we like, it's just like Lisk did a lot of big events. They were basically, their whole team was based in Berlin, so they were throwing a bunch of stuff there. So they had this huge event, like an Apple type keynote, like a big building, like free drinks for everyone, where they basically said they will do this big announcement, and they kind of like did like a rebrand or something. It was a huge marketing event, basically for like a rebrand of one of the products or something. So it wasn't like, it was like a launch of a new protocol. It's going to disrupt everything. It was just like kind of like a marketing event, which was so blown out of what it should be if you just compare it to like normal tech startups, right? That we were like, okay, this thing is going really hot. And then I think at the same time Bitcoin hit 10K, and then it went on to go like 20K at the end of December, like beginning of January. We were aware that it's going completely overheated, I think, but if you're that deep down into it, I think it's always also hard to kind of like, you don't know when it stops, right? So
musical chairs, and if you don't find your seat, you're gonna be left out in the cold.
Yeah, and then I think what was the major learning I had is that when it went completely crazy and then it busted, right, and then it like went down, how long it would actually take this process of this bear market that then started, how long this process was, because I thought, okay, it will happen like a couple of months, right, and then we're just like gonna kickstart again, but it was literally, how long did it take, like 2 years?
It took like, it was a slow bleed to like 4K into 2019. And then I remember it jumped up to 6K, and everybody's like, it's over. But like, it was a slow, like, kind of climb back up.
It was a long and cold bear market.
So I mean, Gelato itself was definitely forged in the midst of the bear market. So
forged in the cold and the darkness.
The Gelato was molded in darkness, and yeah, basically, I think, I mean, before we were already really into tech. Actually, really funnily, to be honest, the first technical videos about like Ethereum were done by, I would say, Ivan on Tech, who is now or has been only doing like price-related talks. But very early on, he actually did like a very software development focused channel with like some early videos, and that was pretty cool. So that was already early 2017, but Even like during the bull market of 2017, we were mostly focusing on tech, I would say. And then, I mean, as soon as the prices were down, there was nothing else to focus on other than tech, right? And what I found crazy is like how the space got disseminated, like how many people left the space, how much noise space. It was really reduced to like only the true like believers.
People in and for the tech.
I'm not sure if it will ever be like that, if there is another bear market, if it will ever be like that it's like such a small group of people remaining. I think this time we've dragged on more people that are like here to stay. Back then, definitely it really reduced itself to the like core people. It was basically for some people thought the space is dead, right? Like they thought it was a fad. So yeah, I mean, Gelato we started in 2019 with a grant from Gnosis, and the grant was desperately needed. Like we basically lived of it. We got like a free access to full node co-working space in Berlin, which I highly recommend to any startup that's looking for like not even funding yet, but just a place to get some freebies and to get off the ground. Full node and backed by Gnosis was like a huge help for us and like a great environment to start a startup in. Not so sure how it is with Corona now, but back then obviously that wasn't an issue. So that's where Gelato started, in the darkness of 2019, but in the beautiful full node in Berlin.
How did you come up with the initial idea for Gelato?
Yeah, it was very. It was basically just out of a project we were building for Gnosis back then. So we started going to hackathons, to Ethereum hackathons in 2018. I went to, for example, East Singapore back then, where I built like an application on top of Kyber, like the first AMM that was hosted on IPFS or something back then. And then we just like went to a bunch of different hackathons, ETH Paris for some month afterwards, and just hacked on cool ideas. And back then, like the lending markets started to slowly come up, right? There was Compound that started like MakerDAO, obviously, and then Compound that started being really seeing some traction, and Aave back then was still ETHLend and had this peer-to-peer model which didn't really blow off, and then you had Dharma entering. There were this peer-to-peer lending protocol first as well before they pivoted, right? And we were very much into lending protocols back then, and I remember I researched a lot MakerDAO. I went to some community calls and stuff, and yeah, we had this idea about this lending protocol that lives on top of a Dutch auction protocol that Gnosis was building at the time, where you can basically bridge the time it takes for the auction to finish by borrowing the funds from a lending protocol, as so your price that you kind of like want to enter in the reverse Dutch auction scheme already was met, and so you can like get access to it. Like you could do like huge market orders by kind of like borrowing funds from a lending protocol. So huge, a bit like flash loans, but not quite.
Before flash loans.
Yeah, so not quite. So, but like going to a similar direction, but kind of like mixed with this auction protocol. And then we actually looked for, okay, we wanted to, rather than kind of like just experiment in like in a lab, we actually wanted to build like a real life project with another team, and get kind of like a real project going with like deadlines and milestones and stuff to kind of like push ourselves. And that's why then there were these grant programs, and then we saw that Gnosis is doing this grant program where you can pitch them ideas and they offer you some funding and help to see it through. And it's basically where we kind of like spec'd out the whole thing. We did like a small demo for them where we hacked together a small smart contract and stuff to showcase how it might look like. And then we pitched it to them, and funnily enough, it's probably better that way. They said, yeah, this idea that you guys have is super interesting and I think it's cool, but I think it's way too advanced for that sort of project that we had in mind, and that we have actually some other ideas around this auction protocol that we would like to see built. And so even though they said no to the project that we pitched, they basically said, hey, I think you guys would still be cool to do a slide like something slightly different to what you proposed, which was basically to automate trades on top of their decentralized exchange. So basically like our first automation use case that we were kind of like tasked to build for Gnosis. And this is kind of like where Gelato started. So we were tasked to do like a dollar cost averaging strategies on top of one of their decentralized exchanges that they built back in the day. And that's where we kind of like entered this like the space. Okay, how do you automate smart contracts? What is necessary to do that, etc., etc. And yeah, this was kind of like the beginning, out of which then Gelato, the idea emerged, because we realized, hey, it's super hard to actually do that in a reliable and decentralized fashion. And yeah, out of this, Gelato came.
What would you say your dev experience was back then? You basically were learning to build while you were like in these projects, right?
So I think basically we learned while doing Solidity. So we, in 2018, I think only in 2018 we started programming really. Then basically what I did, I just went to all of the hackathons I could and just sit down and try to build stuff. And we were doing like similar online courses online where we could kind of like help each other. And then, but we were like teaching ourselves separately. I went to like a coding bootcamp as well for 2 months or so to speed up the process sometime in 2018, which was awesome. And then, we just derived kind of like the spec that we want to build, and then we had to just dive in and teach ourselves Solidity, everything, the whole spec, while doing this project basically. Through that, it took a lot of time because we really had to teach us everything from scratch. But at some point,
I guess you could say we are like true Ethereum or crypto natives in the sense that we like Solidity was the first language that we used and applied to like a real world project. Obviously, we had experience in different programming languages before, but very limited, I would say. Like the first real applications we built were purely in Solidity. That's like where we followed the first software development practices like unit testing and all of that. So yeah, I think in that sense, like our programming journey really started with Ethereum and Solidity, and I think that gives you a really funny perspective because for us that was like the baseline to start with, whereas for other good programmers that enter the space, they like have to rethink the frameworks that they learned in, I don't know, Java or whatnot.
Yeah.
For us, it's more, very often, I think, from a Solidity perspective, from an EVM perspective, and try to apply what I know there to like other way older frameworks.
Are there a lot of people like that now? Have you met other people that are Solidity native, or is it really a unique thing now? I feel like there must be more now.
Yeah, even in the Gelato team, I'm pretty sure like for a lot of the devs like Brandon, right, like the younglings, probably they started out with Solidity as well.
I think there's a whole new wave of younger guys entering the space and teaching themselves how to program just because of the power that kind of like smart contracts and stuff give you.
Yeah.
So I think we are probably one of the first batches of these native Web3 developers, but I think there are more and more people entering the space that are quite like us.
Yeah, so you started Gelato, you got the initial idea in 2019, you got this grant, you were building. So how did it become kind of like this hot project that you were just hacking together till you guys raised your seed round, right? Like how did that happen?
First of all, what's really interesting about Gelato is that we had the original vision, which is still the vision today, to basically be this decentralized network of automation and of bots that any like truly decentralized protocol can integrate and fall back on for core functionality. That was the vision from the very start. Like we kind of thought this already like before we even coded like much at all. Like I would say May 2019, June 2019. Way before even our first talks and so on, that was the vision. If you actually go on YouTube, you will find a talk from us from DebCon 2019 on YouTube where we already pitched this vision. So I think this original idea that is now kind of replicated and copied by many other good projects that we had very early on. Like we didn't stumble upon it as we were building. We had this, and then we were just building towards it all of the time.
Yeah.
It took us quite some time, I would say, first and foremost, because back when we started, the tooling was not where it is today. Like Solidity development was way harder than that is today. There was no builder, there was no hardhat. You did have Truffle and so on, but to be honest, they sucked. And even like Ethers.js, at least we didn't start with that. So everything was really hard, I would say. Like dev tooling sucked. And then this being our first major software project, it definitely had some learning curve to walk up on. And so it was just the two of us completely underfunded in a bear market, right? Like we also didn't dare thinking that like investors would give us a big chunk of money then, because it was like, ETH was trading at, I don't know, $80 or something, right? So that's the kind of sentiment that we started in. And I think what's truly interesting is that we kept on going very long with this. I guess we had our first hackathon prizes, like we won a prize from Chainlink in 2019 in August at ETH Berlin 2, then at Kaiba, that kind of gave us validation that the applications we were building on top of Gelato had real use cases and people liked them. Then we had our alpha in December, January of 2020. There are already some really cool people like really shielded, like for example DeFi Dave discovered us and he really liked it. So there was heavy like limit orders basically on Kyber. We had limit orders on Uniswap back then. That was early 2020. Andre Cronje discovered us then and shielded a bit. And we also did stuff with BZX before they got hacked. So that's like, you know, we were going slowly but always forward. And then everything changed in summer, like DeFi summer basically. That's when kind of, you know, investor interest started picking up again. And then I guess Peter here from MetaCartel was like a kind of a mentor to us. He really like just, you know, pushed us in the right direction, telling us, guys, you're building a cool product. It's time to raise some funds to really grow it. And that's when we raised our seed round. Shortly afterwards, in 2020, we hired our first full-time employee, Mathieu, who is our smart contract wizard. And then, you know, Yaya joined us on the DevOps side, and we slowly hired really good people. Like you joined us right in February 2021, and now we're here. You know what it is? It's like
it's almost 20 people. It's supposed to be over 20 people. Like every week on our calls, it's like literally somebody else joining. And it's like, oh, how's it going? It's just it's funny to see the Zoom call get bigger and bigger and bigger.
And that's just the core team, right? And what I think is truly interesting is that like this vision we had early on, while we've executed many things greatly on it and we added some new things to it, but in general, like the core like thread, the vision that we have is still the same. We're still working towards the same goal.
It's like pretty amazing. You guys had the foresight to see that, you know, automation was going to be a thing, because back in 2019 there was nothing to be automated. Like in 2017, 2018, the only real use case for Ethereum was ICOs, was for raising money, which was a pretty good use case, but it was the only thing. It wasn't really until 2020, or when you saw like these DeFi applications just kind of rise, then it was like, oh wait, like limit orders, DCA, those were like the first like most basic automation use cases, and you know, they're really part of the foundation of what Gelato offers today.
And I think what really helped with us was like, as we were also learning technology, like Web 2 technology back then, we approached every question with like a blank sheet in an open mind. And sometimes I was learning about different servers in Web 2, right? And I was thinking, how does this work in Solidity, right? Like, how does I set interval, which is like a, you know, basically a cron job in JavaScript? How can it work in Solidity? Wait, it can't. Okay, so why can it not? That's annoying. And that's kind of like how we, I think, really early on discovered, wait a second, like we can build like a whole operating system, if you will, to support these kind of programmatic functionality for Web3 applications that were non-existent.
I guess when you're developing Gelato throughout the years, like how do you approach problems? Because it's really like, automation is like really tricky, honestly. Like it's really hard to get right.
Yeah, I think that kind of changed along the way, I would say. When we started Gelato, we started to creating and forming this vision of this very generalistic, decentralized automation protocol that everyone can just like plug into and create any sort of cron jobs or tasks that then repeatedly get executed or once, or basically conditionally get executed. And so we basically sat down for like a month or so and formed this one protocol that fits like every use case basically, and like spent like weeks and months implementing it, then auditing it, and then shipping it into production in summer 2020. Only kind of like to realize that it's so generalistic that it's very like complex and like and hard to implement for other projects, because they have to like do this whole protocol that we build, and have to learn it and have to know also the caveats to it and stuff. And so we actually started to think about, okay, a completely general protocol to automate everything. And then we realized, okay, the tooling and stuff is not ready yet around it to actually make it much easier for developers to integrate it. And so we actually transitioned back to thinking, okay, what are the kind of like most widely used use cases out there in DeFi, especially because DeFi is basically where most of the usage is, that we could solve and that we could basically help automate their use cases. And then we identified kind of like 3 key areas, which were trading, like you only could do like market orders on Uniswap or AMMs, right? And we said, okay, what do you need to do? Limit orders, stop loss orders, dollar cost averaging, for example, right? Then we had debt management and lending and borrowing, which was, okay, how can you refinance interest rates? How can you protect yourself from liquidations and stuff like that? And then we had liquidity management. How can you automate liquidity management around AMMs, for example? Or you had this one idea about ejecting liquidity positions at certain prices, right? These sort of things. And then we kind of like zoomed in a bit more and said, okay, what do these kind of like more specific use cases kind of like require, right? And then we went more focused on these, and then out of these problems and use cases, we try to derive heuristics and basically processes that would then cover also more use cases, but would be a bit more tailored to that, and start to make this protocol that we had, which was a super complex on-chain smart contract protocol, significantly kind of like lighter and less restrictive, push a lot of the complexity kind of like to the back end, to the server side, and allow you to kind of like be a bit more focused around these use cases, so that we could isolate the different problems much more kind of like focused, and due to that could ship much faster. So the whole goal was, okay, how can we make it so we can ship these products and help other developers build these products in the fastest way possible, because the problem Gelato solves at the end of the day is time. So we save time for other development teams. If they use Gelato, they can just save weeks up to a month sometimes in development time. So how could we optimize for saving time? And we built from the super complex Schliesske protocol to more like a lightweight protocol, and some key components on top of it, which then solve more specific problems. And so we were able to isolate problems much more specifically, and this way I think we did a huge leap in 2021, whereas in 2020 we were still a bit slower. Obviously we had like a big team then, and so we moved fast anyways, but we were able to ship more faster because we had less opinions and assumptions. And
I think actually it's not only the team, because we already picked up a lot of speed when we were still a small team. Actually, when you joined, right, we were 5 people, 6 people.
I think we were 8 people.
Yeah, something like that. It's still a small team, and I think like technological decisions are like extremely important here. And no matter how big you are, like sometimes choosing the right tech saves you so much more time than getting 10 more people, right? Like, for sure. So I think in general, if any smart contract developers are listening, there are any like founders that are building their own smart contract based projects, what we've really learned, and I think we were blind to this in the beginning because Solidity was our first like love of a programming language, so we tried to write everything in Solidity.
First love, it's like the most fun and most beautiful of all. It
was really like, you know, it is a fun programming language, I think, because, you know, as a programmer you have so much power. Literally you write some lines of code and they send money around the world, right? That's crazy. Super cool. So but yeah, basically I think and also in the bear market contract deployments were incredibly cheap, so we didn't notice. But as Ethereum prices were rising and network congested, we noticed how much overhead it is to have a big chunk of your application logic be in Solidity. So very like at the end of 2020, we kind of established this mantra, like try to have as little Solidity code as possible. Solidity is still amazing and so on, but only use it for like the mission critical things that have to be stored and verified on the Ethereum chain. Everything else, and believe me, whatever you're building, probably there's still a lot of functions in there that you don't need in Solidity. Try to implement those on the server side using really good technology like TypeScript, Python, Go, whatever you want to use, because these technologies are way faster than Solidity. They allow you to debug much faster. You can easily redeploy them if there's an error. Like shift all of that like to other technologies and only use Solidity and Ethereum for really the mission critical pieces that have to be on there. I think this was kind of like the decision that for us that sped us up like incredibly.
Yeah, it sounds like the evolution of Gelato was from like this like idea like, oh, like let's have it like this general super like decentralized like everything on chain protocol, and let's do everything on chain, but that requires like a whole ecosystem of tooling. And as like a non-dev person, I didn't realize the importance of tooling until I joined Gelato, and I'm just like, wait, there's like all these different kind of pillars that make Solidity run, and like with Gelato that just wasn't there. So in order for you guys to build, like you have to become basically more practical over time, and like executing, like you said, the most like important mission critical like parts of a transaction on chain. That makes a lot of sense. I remember like when I joined Gelato, when I found Gelato, actually it's funny, like it was probably like a year ago today that like I just like left everything and moved to Brazil, and I was just like literally vibing in Brazil for like, I thought I was going to be there for like 8 months. I was like, I'm just going to quit everything. I'm just going to chill. And then like a month into it, I was just bored. And I'm just like, you know what? I should like get back into crypto. Because I like realized like, this is what I love. This is what I want to do. And I remember I was just like, just looking for jobs. And I found Gelato in January when I was at like a cafe in Brazil. I'm just like, whoa, this sounds like really cool and really important. Like,
I didn't even know we had like probably like the first job ad we posted probably. Yeah.
It was on cryptocurrencyjobs.co. I was applying for I was looking for jobs. The first call that we had, like when I like officially got it, you're explaining all of Gelato to me. I'm just like, because like I wasn't technical at all. Like I might have like tried like Solidity like here and there, but like it probably like took me like 4 months to get like used to Gelato, because like I guess that was like my mission as like the growth leader, is like how can I like be able to explain this to both like normal people and also like be able to basically work with developers to integrate it.
It's actually really hard to understand, even for technical users sometimes. I think, like very simply put, you can explain it to people by simply quoting what's possible to do with it, right? Like Gelato, you can use it for limit orders, you can use it to automate this and that. But then there's still the question, okay, but why do I need Gelato for it? That's the hard technical question where you have to go really deep. And at the end of the day, we are a very technical product. Most of our like direct customers are developers or like project, team leads themselves, who integrate a very technical solution. And even they sometimes, like, obviously our goal is to make it easier and easier as we go. But I think, yeah, you did a great job and understanding more and more of it. But there's a learning curve here for everybody, including, right? Like we had this vision, but it took us a long time also to understand what kind of architectural components the solution would be composed of, and we're still not 100% there. There's still like a lot of things that are like question marks of maybe some new tools that we will use to make the product even better for developers.
Yeah, I remember when the V2 came out, that was like a huge leap forward for Gelato. I think that came out in like March. I just note the shipping got like 10 times faster for projects and like for integrations and stuff. Because before I was just like kind of just like waiting around, just like, all right, like I should just think of things to be automated and whatnot. And I was still like learning about Gelato, so how it worked. And then like when the V2 came out, it was like, oh, okay. And then like just slowly trickle of customers, and now it's just like an avalanche of like people and projects wanting to integrate us.
The ideas of what have been realized in the past weeks, they have been around for quite some time already. It's not like they happened overnight, but really it took just like we always try to dumb down what Gelato is to like the kind of like pure essence, right? Yeah. And I think at the beginning of this year, we really were able to identify like the core problems, the individual isolated problems that we actually what we needed to solve, right? And then we kind of like treated them in a more modular way, and that way just allowed us to kind of like focus and build Gelato as this on-chain protocol, as like this bare bones thing that does like core, like a few number of core things very well. And then we have the infrastructure, the backend component to it, right? And then UIs to it, right? And then all these pieces are more modular, and it allows us to also split up the team into more effective units, right? We have our backend team, we have our front-end team, we've got our smart contract team, right? And from a technical perspective, and this just allowed us to ship much faster. And now we're here, and I think we've got like customers launching every week, right? With some news. So.
And I think the craziest part about Gelato is we have all these applications built on top of Gelato. I like to describe Gelato as general purpose automation. Like I basically steal Vitalik's pitch because he describes Ethereum as general purpose computation. And so like anything that can be, like any program that can be mathematically created on Ethereum will be created. Same thing with Gelato, is like anything that can be automated and will be. And with you guys, it's like how it evolves and like, putting the right modular stuff, like adding it along in the future. And so like that gives you guys like a lot of, I guess, design freedom depending on the needs of your customers to like, okay, which use cases we want to implement and stuff. And so like, it's very easy to say, like you said earlier, Luis, it's like, it's best to describe Gelato by its use cases. So you have limit orders, you have, liquidity management, now Uniswap V3 management, and then you have, we just released Gelato Ops, which is like the general purpose tool for general purpose automation. And I think what's cool about Gelato Ops is like, people like me can use it if like I'm like on a farm and I just want to like auto compound it and don't want to like realize the gains. I can just like hook that up and just like continually just farm what I want.
There's this one guy on Polygon, I think he created 17 tasks himself, which is literally just like, there's this loot fork on Polygon apparently, and this like has 17 different tasks where he's just like, I don't even know what he's doing there. He's, I think, claiming some NFTs or, and like 17 different tasks running that like for different addresses claim stuff there, and he's not a developer as well.
Yeah.
He's just, and this is also like, we are still very early here, right? And the way the best practice about Solidity, you have to be like an expert, you have to write things with gas in mind, and these functions have to do, like one function has to do everything in one, and you want to batch them together to save gas costs and stuff, right? And the use cases are super restrictive to like high value transfers. So we have to remember that we are at the very, very beginning of this new computing paradigm, which is Web3. And now we sponsored the hackathon, the Web3 Jam hackathon of ETH Global, right? And most of the developers there, they build stuff on like Avalanche or like Polygon, for example. And what is interesting there is what I saw is these new, because like computation is now much cheaper than it was when we started, and most of the use cases that were on Ethereum, right? What is happening is also what I realize is that the way these developers are thinking about writing the application also changes. Rather than kind of like putting everything in like one function and batching it together, they actually follow more like traditional programming patterns where they just like, okay, one function does one thing, right? And then this function executes, and then after this function executes, you want to have another function that executes, like as a pipeline, but only if this is kind of like done, right? And then maybe after a certain condition is met, and there were so many smaller use cases where they actually use Gelato for that other developers previously didn't use Gelato for, because it's just for them, they don't have to be super precise when it comes to computational power and how much gas they consume and stuff, because it's just like a fraction of a cent they add to the equation. So yeah. I think the new wave of applications on these new blockchains, where they don't have to worry too much about gas anymore, will leapfrog the use case you can build with Gelato. And then, of course, all the new ideas that are not DeFi specific, with gaming NFTs coming in now as well, which are now feasible because we're not talking about $1,000 per transaction in terms of costs, right? I think this is just like opening up a huge array of use cases that we actually never thought about ourselves. We came from like the financial application point of view, but now there are like others coming in, trickling in with like NFTs or gaming or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think this will be like the new wave, and I'm super excited to see, okay, what will these guys build on top, right? I don't even know.
What is your favorite Gelato use case?
So I have to say, for me, the funniest still is Aavegotchis.
The heading.
Yeah, I always show it. It's just also cool because Brandon, a guy who joined our team as well, he kind of built it when he was 19, and he was one of the first people who really found Gelato in the internet, and even used like our old protocol, which was extremely hard to use as a developer, and still just went with it and got like really into it without us back then being very famous or something, right? So I think that, and given that the use case is quite useful and many people use it, is probably for me one of the coolest ones out there. Yeah, so that, and to be honest, from like a usefulness point of view, limit orders, even though they're becoming commoditized now, I think it's still so great because I always want to trade on decentralized exchanges. I don't like using centralized exchanges, and just a basic order type like a limit order is such a missing piece of decentralized exchanges. So I think this is also really cool, and we see a lot of usage here.
What about you, Hilmar?
So what I'm really looking forward to is not the use case that has been built right now, but that is about to be built soon, right?
Yeah.
And what is next, and given that we are kind of like at the moment entering this multi-chain universe, right, where you have like all these different blockchains and Gelato already like supporting, and this is also the cool thing about Gelato. I see it these days as kind of like an add-on that you put into like a EVM-based protocol, and like now you've got automation, right? So Gelato launches on your network. Now all the devs suddenly have kind of easy automation on their fingertips, right? And what will just be exciting, and we already see like applications like Pool Together or Aave or whatnot being deployed on all these different networks, right? As instances, and now suddenly they don't have like one backend anymore, so to say. They have like 5 backends, right? And they have five different states, different amounts of money and fees being earned on all these different networks, right? And I think there we will see the next huge use case for Gelato just being this underlying infrastructure that kind of like is the foundation of all these networks and kind of like lies underneath them, and then enables you to automate transactions between them and move money from one place to another via bridges like Connex, for example.
Yeah.
And what I just find amazing here is what is kind of like a use case that I would need right now, or like us as a team, is just basically automated liquidity management of your token across all these networks, where you basically just like have one contract. Like we have this concept of Guni, right, which is an automated liquidity management on Uniswap v3 on mainnet. But imagine you just have this one token where you, as a DAO, deposit some ETH and some GEL in, and then this just moves across all the different networks automatically based on how big the TVL is and how the fees are, where the demand is, and kind of like just has certain conditions preset and just like moves completely autonomously between these networks. And I think these sort of things we will be discovering and seeing realized in 2022, which I'm super excited about. And I think this would just like this will make the whole space itself much more efficient, right? Because then it just moves really to where the demand is in terms of liquidity and everything, and it will be much more complex. And I think I'm super excited what other use cases will be in a similar area. But I think liquidity management, such a huge problem and implication itself, that will be just fascinating to see.
Yeah, to go off that point, I think my personal favorite use case is the G-Uni for sure. I really see that like it's in the best position to become like the standard for like people that want to provide liquidity to Uniswap v3, but just like don't want to deal with like managing the ranges and whatnot, because it's really complicated. And the way they built Uniswap v3 was just for applications like G-Uni to be built on top of it. So that's probably the one I'm like most excited for. And also like what you're saying about bridges and whatnot, like trying to manage liquidity across bridges, like that's, liquidity is as fractured as it is. It's like there's liquidity on chain, and now with every new chain, like it just splits up. So like being able to, guarantee that you can like move like a large amount of liquidity at a decent rate, and making sure that there's even liquidity there is just going to be such a vital issue. And also like talking to other protocols, like when we were all in like Lisbon, when we were in Paris, like the thing I got a lot is like a lot of cross-chain messaging. A lot of people are excited about when we do come up with that use case. So like let's say like there's a governance vote on Ethereum, you can like vote for it on Polygon, stuff like that. Outside of Gelato, like what other projects and like what other things happening in like DeFi, it doesn't even have to be DeFi, but just in Web3 that excite you?
So I think probably I'm speaking for the both of us here, but as you know, we work really hard and we don't have much time outside of Gelato. So there's definitely like 20 or 30 projects on my kind of bucket list of things I wanted to read up on the weekend, which I never get to apparently. So I'm personally like some of the DeFi 2.0 ideas I heard sounded really cool, like Ohm, obviously. I know you've been chilling Ohm very early on. You were like an early Ohmie.
I was in July. I was chilling. I'm like, guys, this is pretty cool. Yeah.
I hope you kept that bag. So yeah, I think that sounds really cool. So all of those DeFi 2.0 use cases, and then to be honest, I'm really curious about like these game use cases. I really want to check out Zrun. I know that I watched some horse races in our team retreat, right? Like
Normandy, that was fun.
Ari is really into that. So yeah, I think that sounds really interesting. Like gaming in general, I would really want to check out what's going on there. I know way too little. I would rather know much more about what's being built in gaming right now on blockchains, I would say. And then, to be honest, like probably the most pressing and interesting use case for me to research is just like hot protocol connects, all these Uniswap, all these bridging protocols. That's extremely important tech.
Yeah.
I use it myself. Like I use it every day. I think the most application I use is simply just bridges, because I'm going between Avalanche, BC, Polygon, Arbitrum, Phantom, like every day, multiple times. So yeah, I want to know what's going on there.
What about you, Hilmar?
For me right now, I think bridges and these middleware pieces basically that connect all the different networks. I think they are, for me, and this is exactly where Gelato also is, right? I think that's super interesting. Of course, there's one side, which is the liquidity side. Okay, how can you move assets back and forth, right? And then there's on more like the messaging side. Okay, how do you move or react and move data and messages and execute transactions with certain information on these networks, right? Where we are more focused on, and not on this liquidity one, where like G-Uni or like other protocols are more focused on. And so I think, they're kind of like the bridges are the new banks, right?
Bridges are the new banks. I came up with that. I mean, you took. I think I said that to you, and then you just kind of took it. But like, I'm proud. Like, proliferate that meme. Take credit for it.
It can very well be the case. And so I think I'm very bullish on these. I'm also curious how this will play out, right? So at the moment we have the fragmentation of networks. There's a huge incentive for projects to not build on top of on like networks, but can like build their own ones. I think there's a new EVM-based compatible chain which claims to be the fastest one coming out every day, it seems, these days, right?
Yeah.
And everyone knows this is not going to last, right? So I don't think that we will see 20, 30 different networks be there in the long run.
No.
I'm pretty sure it will kind of consolidate. How it consolidates, it will be interesting to see. But yeah, so at the moment, these solutions which bridge assets and bridge messages between them, I think are super interesting. And
I don't know if I got it from someone else, but what I said earlier is like, if you have these bridges that are banks, they could like in theory issue like, I said this at dinner when we were having dinner in Portugal. Like in theory, they could, if you send USDC, send it to like a bridge, they can in theory issue like FUSDC on a different chain, and they can just, in theory, I guess they could fractionalize it if they want to, but like, or like just like keep it in account.
They can run fractional. They can basically do what banks do, right? So they issue IOUs, and at some point, if they're big enough, they don't have to keep their positions 100% collateralized. They can fractionalize them, and they can lend out more than they have, right? And earn the spread. And only if the bank run appears and everyone wants to withdraw at the same time, then they will get into trouble. But if you have like millions of dollars and these networks are live and running well, then I think that won't happen. So that will happen, right? So it's
I mean, like with like things that with like any fractional reserve, like it's really about trust that builds up over time. I mean, like the old project that when I was at Everpedia, they started Frax, and which was like it's actually a working fractional reserve algorithmic stablecoin, and they've been live for like almost a year now, and they still haven't broken their peg. I've seen like in terms of like exciting protocols and exciting things that I've seen, there's this one protocol called Bean. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it. It's instead of being backed by collateral, it's backed by credit. And to be honest, I don't like understand it completely, but I didn't ape, but like I put in like a little bit. Like you're earning like 2,000% APY if you like put your Bean, which is the stablecoin, in a silo, and you get these. I really don't understand it. It's like pretty like mathematical and big. It's like, but like
one thing I've learned is that whatever you say, people should ape into. No investment advice, by the way.
Yeah.
Don't this.
Yeah, no, they actually just reached like 50 million like in market cap recently, and I've been keeping tabs on them for a bit, and I'm just like, you know what, I'll just like, you know, because it was pretty toppy before, so like honestly I sold a bit, and I'm just like, you know what, let's just throw some in the beanstalk, see where it goes. And another thing I'm like, there's a lot of things I'm excited about that I've like been looking into. There's this thing called a silo finance. Have you guys heard of silo finance? They're like super new. They're basically like a DeFi 2.0 lending primitive. So you know how on Compound and Aave, it's pooled money markets, and like basically if like one coin has like a token has an oracle attack or this, it's like everybody suffers. What Silo does? Wait, what?
I think it's called globalized.
Globalized. Yeah. So what Silo does, which I find fascinating, is it literally puts every asset in a silo. Like, let's say if you like have Uniswap and you want to borrow Balancer, it basically has ETH in the middle as glue. So you lend Uniswap to borrow ETH, and then you basically like lend the ETH to borrow Balancer. And so with this, like, let's say if there's like an oracle attack on Uniswap for whatever reason, like only like the Uniswap pool is affected, and so like the rest of the pools, they're fine, they're cool. And so what could happen with this basically is you can have a lot more, you can easily onboard a lot of long tail assets in the same way that, you know, you could like finally have liquidity for a lot of long tail assets with Uniswap. It's like the same thing but with Silo. And then also it's like a lot safer for like bigger assets to be on there, and like if like you're like an institutional player, like something like Silo, if it like ends up working out, it sounds a lot more attractive than like your standard like money market. So I find that one like absolutely fascinating. If you're still listening to this podcast this late, this is like the most alpha you can get. Like they're having their like token sale pretty soon, I think in December 6th. And so like, yeah.
I did see the same. So I talked to the guy from Beta Finance once.
Yeah.
I think Beta Finance spun out or something like, or got funded by Alpha Finance. So I think he had a
Alpha Beta.
Yeah. He had a similar approach to what you described. And if I'm not mistaken, doesn't Rari also do similar?
So Rari does. So they have isolated lending pools. So it's like they have different pools. So like if like one pool is affected, that like the rest of the pools aren't, and it's like super. What's cool about that is like you get like stuff like you get like customized lending pools like Olympus Pool Party. Like if you're like Tetranode and like you just like want to create a pool to like lend out your assets and like let degens be degens, you have like Tetranode's Locker, and like, you know, I mean, I was just like sitting in there with my SOM, and it was just like absurd. I'm just like, is this real? Like, is this actually happening? But yeah, honestly, like outside of DeFi, like the thing I'm most excited about is DAOs, and just seeing like new I feel like DAOs are more of a cultural technology than like a technical technology. It's really about the culture, you know, like kind of like what values the DAO like instills in its group members, and what, you know, values the group members bring to the DAO. And you get like a lot of really interesting groups kind of emerge. Like, and it feels like everyone's a lot more egalitarian than like hierarchical. I see it as like DAOs could be a new way of just organizing people and organizing efforts. Like you could have a DAO spun up for like a specific cause, like Constitution DAO. You can have like a DAO, you know, and it kind of like appears, and then it's like if it accomplishes it or like it doesn't accomplish it, it can just like kind of disintegrate. Or you can have like DAOs for more like longer term goals, or more like, you know, or like. I remember hearing Balaji like give a podcast on Tim Ferriss. He was like, what if there's somebody made like a pothole DAO, and like the DAO was just dedicated to filling potholes in a city. And like I can just imagine like the pothole DAO like having its like yield farms. Maybe it's like has like, you know, has some like an SOM stack. Maybe it's like doing some farming. Maybe it's auto compounding with Gelato, and then it's using the funds to just like cover potholes in the city. And what you kind of get with that is like it kind of, the DAO grows legitimacy in the city, and like, hey, like what if we do like another public service? Like what if we shovel all the driveways for free? Like, and then you kind of get this effect where like this parallel system just kind of rises, and I feel like DAOs are the best way to organize these parallel systems that arise in like Web3.
I think somehow what is emerging are like single issue DAOs. I think initially we had like a lot of like DAOs that tried to do accomplish many different things at once. What seems to be really powerful now are these single issue DAOs, because you get like some really quick feedback and everybody can align like behind the same vision. You have probably less disputes because there's less topics to argue about. You have like one goal, right? Like buying the constitution or filling potholes. So I think we will see a lot more of those actually as well.
And I think, yeah, I'm super bullish on those as well, because this is basically just accelerating experimentation and with it innovation, right? Because it doesn't matter how stupid the idea is. Like, I want to buy the constitution, which is like itself kind of like a crazy idea, right? But you can try it, right? And you can, if there are any other degens out there who want to do the same, right? And you can literally, and the costs of doing it are nearly zero, right? So you can just like use the DAO, you can create a Twitter, you can do like a Medium post explaining what you want to do, you can spin up a Discord, and then you try, right? What is the opportunity cost you? You lose a day, maybe like some transaction fees on Ethereum, right? So that's basically the cost of initiating this, right? And of course you need to create some hype, etc. But then you can definitely try out everything, and 99% of these things will not work, but this is awesome, because like the 1% that will work and will not have been tried before that if you couldn't just like create this community. And basically what it does, it commoditizes building companies, right? Because what is a company? A company for me is just people coming together and pool resources and work on one objective collectively with those pooled resources. And one of the building blocks next to like labor, for example, is capital, right? And it was never as easy as it is now to pool capital from all over the world on the internet with like one click. And now you've got like $5 million and you can buy and you can do anything with that. So
and to earn yield, that's like the crazy part. Like you described potholes, you can it's or like a no loss lottery with pool together. Like literally, you can put capital in there and generate revenue with it like in an instant. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think the thing with DAOs is they make memes actionable. They make memes real. It's like, hey, let's buy the Constitution. Hey, let's buy SeaWorld. Like, I wonder what's going to come next. Like, I feel like we're really at the beginning of this, and you know. I
think we'll probably see like basketball clubs being bought soon, or like.
No, there's a DAO for that, Kraus House. And,
there's probably. I'm in this. I'm in this Discord about Dune DAO. Or Spice.
Oh, you're in Dune DAO?
Yeah, obviously, man.
Yeah, I'm in Dave DAO. It's funny because I kept on seeing David Hoffman at every conference I went to, and we would always joke, me and like other Davids that we meet, like, there's so many Davids in Web3 and crypto. Like, what if we just started Dave DAO? And then we actually did it in New York. It's like, all right, we're gonna spin up Discord and start Dave DAO. And what's cool about first name DAOs, it's like people want to join crypto. It's, you know, like, oh, like how do I start? And it's like, oh, what's your name? Matt. Oh, join Matt DAO. Like, oh, what's your name?
Yeah, I'm quite alone with the Hilmar DAO.
Hilmar DAO.
I'm the only one in there.
Honestly, I think you're the only Hilmar I know, to be honest. You're the first Hilmar I met. Have you met any other Hilmars?
Yeah, I think Luis was actually one of my only friends who knew another Hilmar outside of me.
It's like you just attract Hilmars. Yeah.
You know, where's in Australia?
Oh, he's in Switzerland.
He's in Switzerland.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, with DAOs, like we were saying earlier, like capital, especially capital is just like so abundant. It feels like every other day I'm hearing about $1 billion fund that's being raised, and I'm just like, there's so much capital, but like there's only like not only just like so many projects, but like so many projects like with like people that know what they're doing, like Gelato. Like there's a reason why Gelato is where it is today. It's like you guys were like forged in the bear market. You guys got, you know, you stayed true to your vision. You knew what you were building. It's kind of like when they were like over 100 years ago, when they were trying to like, who's gonna be the first person to fly? Like who's gonna be the first person to make like a working airplane, and investing like probably the equivalent of hundreds of millions of dollars trying to figure out how to fly, and they couldn't do it. And it was literally just two guys in a garage in North Carolina that figured out how to fly. It wasn't the money that got them there. It was just it was their own intellectual curiosity, their drive, and I feel like you're gonna have kind of the same thing. Like history repeats. You're gonna have the same thing over and over again, and you're gonna have it in crypto. It happened with you guys as well. Like you guys just got like a grant from Gnosis at first. Like you didn't have a huge raise, and even like your seed round wasn't that big. And you know, I remember when you were raising for like this current round, it was just like you guys were just the hottest girl in the room, and you just had like you're picking, you're basically saying you're picking like who do I want to build with, and I think like the builders of the future are not going to ask like, oh, I need money. It's more going to be like, who do I want to build with and partner with, and who's going to support me.
Market sentiments can also change, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it won't be like capital is so abundant now in crypto these days, and the difference between the last bear market is I don't think the money is flowing back into like fiat.
Yeah.
It will stay in crypto.
No more no fiat.
No. It won't, like my money isn't going to fiat, not anytime soon.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think neither will the other money go, because what is waiting for you in fiat? Waiting for you in fiat is just negative interest rates and like shitty banks.
And a ton of boomers.
Yeah, that's true.
So basically, the only difference there is that you still have access to like traditional markets with fiat, so like real estate or stocks or bonds, right? But I think this will more and more also shift into Web3 and will be enabled. And if that is enabled, then there's literally no single reason to put your money back into fiat. I don't see a single reason to do it. So, and then it's just a matter of time until all the money flows over.
It's like gravity. It's like eventually like all capital will be in Web3, or I feel like it's going to be first slowly and all at once. It's kind of amazing that DeFi is only $260 billion in TVL. That's really minuscule. And like, if you think of the scale of the global financial system and like what could be like, you know, what the TVL could be like tens of trillions of dollars.
How much is TVL in DeFi right now?
Like, I think it's like 260 billion.
For me, it feels like yesterday where we had this $1 billion TVL meme.
So I'm gonna wrap this up soon, but like one final question is just like, outside of Gelato, like what are you guys into? Like what music are you guys into? And also kind of like what inspired the aesthetic of Gelato?
I think we actually got a lot of inspiration from what you also listen to, like Young Lean, right?
Yeah.
So we went to a lot of his concerts here in Europe. Young Lean, the whole Sad Boys Entertainment, Drain Gang, shout out Blade, shout out X2K, shout out Thaiboy Digital, free Thaiboy. So some really like, you know, I would say corny or whatever rap music here in Europe, and they kicked off like this whole like 2013 they kicked off this whole like digital art kind of aesthetic, right? That is now really popular.
The
like
vaporwave, yeah.
The vaporwave.
I mean, literally, this shirt is like part of. It's part of that.
So I think some inspiration is definitely drawn from that kind of like digital art style that is now really popular, which I believe was very heavily influenced by like the Young Lean movement early on.
Yeah, and I think that's also exactly our generation, Dave. Right? I think we are all kind of like the same age here, like mid 1990s, and then we are this weird generation that was kind of like grew up before the internet kind of like went mainstream, and we kind of like. Right when we hit puberty, kind of like the internet really took off, and we didn't know the world before. But then, in the midst of it switching over, we were still like young enough to really like utilize it fully. So I think we are kind of like unique in that sense, and I think that vibe we kind of like wanted to put into Gelato. I think Gelato is also like from the aesthetics, I think we just want to have positive and emotionful vibes to the people that use us and interact with us. We want them to be good, like brown, bright, soft colors that feel warm but chilled, a bit psychedelic, but like that you feel like comfortable. And I think that this is kind of like the vibe we want to portray with our service and our community, which is like, hey, we are taking care of. You can chill, all whack me basically, right?
I think we also want to kind of like show that machines and bots, like they have a lot of bad connotations in the internet, right? Like bots are usually associated with chatbots, scams, annoying stuff, right? What we want to portray is that bots can be used for the good. Like every human can have a bot, access to a bot to act on their behalf and act in their best interest. That's kind of like, I think, what we also want to portray here, that the future is bright and that even machines as they will join us more and more, and as they will transact and compete with us, they will also help us if applied correctly, and that's what we're here to build, basically.
Yeah, I think I read that Japanese, it's the difference between like American culture, or I guess maybe like Western culture, I'm not sure if this is the case in Europe, and like Japanese culture when it comes to like robots, is that in like American media or like American movies, like the robot's like the villain or like the evil guy, like the Terminator or like the Matrix. And like going back to what Hilmar said, it's like it's really interesting being in the generation like mid-90s, like remembering like the time. I really consider the cutoff being like when you got your first smartphone or your iPhone. It's like the time before iPhones was just like, it was like such a different world because you didn't have the entire world at your fingertips. But with like the iPhone, it's like you literally have like everything right there. And I was like thinking about it. It's like you guys ever hear of like allegory of the cave? The Socrates like allegory. Did you guys take philosophy in college or no?
Maybe if you talk about it,
the allegory. If you ever see like memes of like, if you ever seen the meme of like people like holding up like shadow figures like in a cave, and like people are like looking at the wall with like the shadows, and like then there's like somebody like climbing out of the wall, and it's like to the sunlight and stuff and whatnot. Sometimes I think like looking at the iPhone is like I'm just like looking at like the shadows of like people, and it's just like they're like they're whether it's like on Twitter or like on Instagram, just like kind of just like their online personas that they just like want us to see. And like it's only like, and like, but if you go out and like actually like meet them in real life, it's like a whole completely different thing. And the thing is, like, before the iPhone, before like social media, like that didn't exist. Like, you know, that instant feedback loop on Twitter just like didn't exist, or like just like Instagram being like everyone's personal magazine didn't exist. And like you can really see it like change people, like how, you know, people like older than us are just a lot different than people younger than us. And like sometimes I wonder like how, if we like when we go into like Web3, like how are we gonna like make those like feedback loops? Like, are we gonna make them like more? Are we gonna just like fine tune them to the algorithm and just like all of us be stressed? Or are we gonna like actually like, you know, fine tune them to quality and value? But like I don't know. I was just like kind of thinking about that the other day. It was just like a long-winded rant.
Yeah, I think we need another podcast.
Yeah, we definitely do. I have like a flight at 1:30. It's like about to be 10:30 now, so I should probably run to that. Yeah.
But yeah, some beautiful note to finish on. I mean, you can go really deep here. I think we should have a Joe Rogan style podcast in person whenever we meet again in person.
I'm definitely down for like round 2. Anyways, thanks guys. This has been an awesome podcast. Like finally the Gelato founders on the DeFi scoop. It's about damn time. And if you're listening to this, like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a good review. Gonna keep making these things, so like let me know who you want on next. Thanks guys.
Thanks a lot for having us, Dave.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.